I should have never gotten off that train. The thought slammed into my mind the moment I stepped onto the cracked platform, my breath turning to mist in the cold night air. The train's departure whistle screamed through the empty station, a final warning I ignored. The doors groaned shut, and in seconds, the train vanished into the darkness, leaving me stranded. I clutched my backpack, swallowing hard as I took in my surroundings. The station looked ancient, forgotten by time, swallowed by decay. The metal benches were rusted, the platform lights flickered erratically, and the walls were covered in layers of peeling paint and faded graffiti. A signpost, barely legible under the dim glow, read Midnight Hollow Station. I had never heard of this place. The name sent a strange shiver down my spine. It wasn't on the map when I checked earlier. In fact, there shouldn't have been any stops between the last station and my destination. And yet, here I was. I glanced around, expecting to see someone, anyone, but the platform stretched out in eerie silence, bordered by thick trees that swallowed the station in an inky black abyss. There were no ticket booths, no waiting passengers, no sound except for the faint hum of flickering lights and the distant rustling of leaves. Something was wrong. I reached for my phone, but there was no signal. Of course, a cold gust of wind howled through the empty station, carrying with it a faint whisper. It was so soft I almost thought I imagined it. "Why did you get off?" I spun around, my heart hammering against my ribs. The platform was still empty, no movement, no shadow shifting in the dim light. Just silence. I took a cautious step forward, peering down the empty railway tracks. They stretched endlessly into the darkness, disappearing as though they led to nowhere. There were no signs of another train approaching, no distant lights in the tunnel. Then I saw it. A lone figure standing at the far end of the platform. My breath hitched. The figure was motionless, facing away from me, dressed in what looked like an old station attendant's uniform, gray, faded, and torn at the edges. I hadn't noticed them before. They hadn't been there when I arrived. "Excuse me," I called hesitantly. "Do you know when the next train is coming?" No response. The figure didn't move, didn't even acknowledge me. I took a step closer, my pulse quickening. Something felt terribly off. The wind picked up again, carrying a chilling whisper through the air. "You shouldn't be here." This time I knew I wasn't imagining it. The voice was real, and it wasn't mine. I turned sharply, scanning the platform. The shadows seemed darker now, stretching unnaturally long as if reaching toward me. The lights flickered harder, buzzing angrily like something was disrupting their flow. When I looked back at the figure, it was gone. My stomach dropped. I hadn't heard footsteps. I hadn't seen movement. It just disappeared. That's when the sound of a train whistle echoed through the empty station. But it wasn't coming from the tracks. It was coming from behind me. Slowly, stiffly, I turned. A train was approaching, but it wasn't on the rails. It was gliding soundlessly along the platform, its windows dark, its metal exterior rusted and broken, as if it had been pulled from the depths of the earth. The air around it crackled, thick with static, the same way a TV distorts before losing signal. Then, through one of the shattered windows, I saw them, passengers, dozens of them. Their faces were pale, hollow-eyed, and staring directly at me. A single collective whisper filled the air, sending ice through my veins. "All aboard." And then, the lights went out. Darkness swallowed the station. For a moment, I couldn't move. My breath hitched in my throat, my heart hammering so loudly I saw it echoed through the silence. I blinked rapidly, trying to adjust to the pitch-black void around me. The flickering lights were gone. The eerie train had vanished, but the feeling of unseen eyes crawling over my skin remained. Then a sound, not a whisper this time. A shuffle, slow, deliberate, coming from the far end of the platform. My fingers trembled as I reached for my phone, desperate for any light. The screen flickered on, casting a dim glow in the suffocating darkness. I swung it around, my breath thus shallow, scanning my surroundings. The platform was empty, but something had changed. The old signpost that had read Midnight Hollow Station was no longer rusted and decayed. It looked new. The peeling paint was gone. The metal gleamed under my phone's light. I took a hesitant step forward, my shoes scraping against the cracked concrete, but even that had changed. The cracks were gone. The ground beneath me felt solid, polished, as if the station had just been built. This wasn't right. I turned back toward the bench where I had been standing just minutes ago. And my blood turned to ice. A figure sat there now. A woman, dressed in an old-fashioned grey coat. Her hands neatly folded on her lap. Her face was turned away, dark curls spilling over her shoulders, hiding her features. She hadn't been there before. My mouth went dry. I swallowed hard, forcing words past my lips. Excuse me? She didn't react. The air around me felt heavier, pressing against my chest like unseen hands, trying to hold me in place. A cold breeze swept through the station, carrying with it a strange scent, something musty, old, like damp paper and rusted iron. I took another step closer. My phone's light trembled in my grip. She turned her head. A slow, unnatural movement. And then I saw her face, or rather the absence of it. Her features were hollow, empty, as if someone had erased them from existence. No eyes, no nose, no mouth, just smooth, pale skin stretched across her skull. A silent scream clawed at my throat. Then she stood up. I stumbled backward, nearly dropping my phone. The darkness around me shifted, warped, as if the station itself was breathing. The cold breeze turned into a biting wind, howling through the empty space. And then I heard it. A voice, but not from the woman, from everywhere. Do you know what happened here? The air grew thick with whispers, countless voices overlapping, a chorus of sorrow and warning. Shadows stretched unnaturally across the platform, shifting like living things. The woman took a step toward me. My body refused to move. Do you know why this station was abandoned? My mind screamed for me to run, but my legs were frozen in place. Then, just as suddenly as it had disappeared, the station's dim lights flickered back on. The suffocating darkness receded. The woman was gone. The signpost was old again, rusted and broken. The cracks in the concrete had returned, but the whispers remained. I forced my legs to move, staggering toward the only exit I could see. A rusted metal staircase leading up to what I hoped was the outside world. Then I saw the plaque. It was embedded in the wall beside the staircase, covered in dust and grime. With shaking fingers, I wiped it clean, revealing the inscription beneath. On this platform, on a cold winter night in 1956, the Midnight Hollow train derailed. 76 passengers perished. Their bodies were never found. My stomach twisted. A gust of wind rushed past me, and the whispers grew louder, more urgent. Run. A shadow moved at the edge of my vision. I didn't hesitate this time. I ran. I took the stairs two at a time, my breath ragged, my pulse pounding in my ears. The whispers chased me, growing louder, overlapping in a ghostly chorus of warnings and sorrow. Cold air clawed at my back, pushing me forward as if something unseen was urging me to escape. But when I reached the top of the staircase, my stomach dropped. The exit was gone. The doorway that should have led to the outside world was now just a brick wall. Old, cracked, covered in moss, as if it had been there for decades. I spun around, my breath catching in my throat. The station had changed again. The platform below wasn't abandoned anymore. It was alive with movement, shadowy figures walking along the tracks, their shapes flickering like candle flames. Their outlines were hazy, distorted, shifting between solid and transparent. I recognized them, the passengers from the train. They were dressed in mid-century clothing, long coats, fedoras, old-fashioned dresses. Some clutched suitcases. Others stood stiffly, waiting for a train that would never come. Their faces were pale, their eyes hollow, and they were all staring at me. A chill crawled up my spine. I took a step back, pressing my hands against the cold brick behind me. My fingers scraped over something rough, something carved into the stone. Slowly, I turned and shined my phone's dim light over it. More words. The train still runs, the passengers still board, but they never leave. The hairs on my arm stood on end. A sound broke the silence. A metallic screech, deep and guttural, like steel grinded against steel. I turned just in time to see the train appear again. But this time, it wasn't an illusion. It emerged from the tunnel, its rusted exterior gleaming under the flickering station lights. The windows were cracked, some shattered completely, revealing the same ghostly passengers inside. Their faces pressed against the glass, their empty eyes fixed on me. A whisper rose above the others. "You boarded once." My chest tightened. Number, that wasn't possible. I had never been here before. I had never set foot in this station before tonight. Had I? The words on the brick wall burned into my mind. The whispers wrapped around me, suffocating. Then, from the platform below, one of the shadowy figures moved. A man. Unlike the others, his form was solid, too real. He stood beneath the dim light, his face obscured by shadows. But as he stepped closer, something in me recognized him before I even saw his features. And when he finally emerged into the light, the world tilted. It was me, pale, hollow-eyed, dressed in the same clothes I was wearing right now. A grotesque mirror image, standing motionless on the platform below, looking straight at me. My doppelganger. A deep, aching cold spread through my bones. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Then he spoke. "You never left." The train's horn screamed. The world around me shattered. The world cracked open like shattered glass. The train's deafening horn ripped through the station, an unholy shriek that made my bones tremble. The ghostly figures on the platform blurred and flickered, their hollow eyes fixed on me as if waiting for something. My doppelganger, the other me, stood frozen, lips curled into an unreadable expression. "You never left." His words echoed inside my skull, twisting reality into something I could no longer trust. I clutched my head, nausea rolling through me. This isn't real. This can't be real. But the cold metal of the station railing beneath my fingers told me otherwise. The flickering lights, the scent of rust and decay, the whispers swirling in the air, they were all too real. The train screeched to a stop. The doors slid open, and something inside moved. I knew, in the marrow of my bones, that if I stepped onto that train, I would never come back. A gust of icy wind pushed against me, nearly knocking me forward. I grabbed onto the rusted railing, my heart slamming against my ribs. I could feel the pull of the train, an unnatural force urging me to board. Then, my doppelganger took a step toward me. "You're already one of us," he said softly, tilting his head. His voice was my own but wrong, distorted, layered with something ancient and hollow. "Why fight it?" "No," I whispered, shaking my head. My voice came out hoarse, barely audible over the wind howling through the station. "This isn't real. I'm not supposed to be here." His smile widened. "Then why do you remember?" A sharp pain stabbed through my skull. Images, memories, flashed behind my eyes. A train ticket in my hand. The cold seat of a midnight train beneath me. A conversation with a stranger. The sound of screeching brakes. A moment of weightlessness falling. My breath hitched. The accident. I had been here before. Number. Not just here. I had been on that train. The truth crashed over me like a tidal wave. This wasn't just an abandoned station. This wasn't just a nightmare. This was the place where I had died. I staggered back, my mind reeling, the ghostly passengers, the whispers, the feeling of déjà vu. It all made sense now. I had boarded the train that night, and I had never made it to my destination. "Accept it," my doppelganger urged. "Step onto the train. Join us." The doors of the train remained open, waiting. Inside, shadowy figures turned their heads toward me, their hollow eyes filled with something like anticipation. My breath came in short gasps. I had a choice. I could step onto the train and become one of them, forever trapped in this endless loop of arrival and departure. Or I turned sharply, my eyes locking onto the brick wall at the top of the stairs. The words carved into it flickered, shifting like a mirage. The whispers changed. "There is still time." A way out? I didn't think. I just ran. Behind me, the doppelganger screamed. The wind roared, nearly knocking me off my feet. The station trembled, the walls cracking, the ground splitting open beneath the tracks. Shadows clawed at my ankles, trying to drag me back. But I kept running. The brick wall at the top of the stairs began to change. The solid stone shifting, flickering between reality and illusion. For a split second, I saw what was behind it. A door, a way out. I threw myself forward, slamming into the wall. And fell through. Epilogue. I woke up gasping for air, not in the station, not in the darkness, but in a hospital bed. Blinding white lights overhead, the steady beep of a heart monitor, the scent of antiseptic. A nurse rushed over, eyes widening in shock. "He's awake," she called out. I blinked, my mind struggling to catch up. I was alive. I had survived the train crash. Somehow, some way, I had escaped the place between life and death. But as relief flooded my chest, a shiver crawled down my spine. Because in the reflection of the hospital window, I saw it. A shadow. A figure standing on a distant platform. Watching. Waiting. The train still runs. And it's still looking for its lost passengers.